into Europe. Legislators over there have ratified an economic partnership agreement with the EU and the Southern African Development Community, or SADC as it's more commonly known over here. That deal covers South Africa, Namibia, Mozambique, Botswana, Swaziland and Lesotho. Now, before approving the agreement in Strasbourg over in France, there was quite a bit of debate, and it was torn on exactly how much the deal favours the European Union at the expense of the 6 African countries. The EU Commissioner on Trade said the deal had been negotiated to benefit the African countries as well.
The markets of the 6 African countries are going to be only partially and very gradually open to European products, and they remain their right to invoke protective measures to protect nascent fragile industries or for food security reasons. We give full access to our market, but we ask for less in return. We provide for safeguards to make sure that domestic industries are not damaged.
Let's find out exactly where this is heading now. Kevin Osbeck joins us live from Brussels with more data on the story. Kevin, 216 MEPs voted against this deal, another 66 abstained. What were their arguments for not approving it?
Well, there were a few arguments, and there were several reasons why not every member of the European Parliament supports this EPA or Economic Partnership Agreement. Some of the concerns from European lawmakers come from South African citrus. Now, some South African citrus can have what's known as citrus black spot on it. That's a disease, but the EU has put in place a number of steps or fences there to make sure that a huge amount of that type of citrus doesn't come in to Europe. Also, some members of the parliament say they thought this may actually hurt development or growing industries in those South African countries. They say if the markets down there are flooded with European goods, that could really hamper growth down there. But that commissioner who you just heard from, who negotiated this deal, says this is very much an asymmetrical deal. In other words, this benefits the South African countries much more than it benefits the EU. In case in point, she says those African countries will essentially have full access to the European market. They can export a lot tariff-free, but it does not work both ways. Europe cannot flood those African countries with goods, and of course, Europe will still have to pay some export taxes there.
Indeed. Does this deal, however, as it currently stands, does it have room to expand to cover investment and trade in intangibles like intellectual property and services?
So right now, this deal, this economic partnership agreement, only covers trade and development. It does not cover intellectual property. It does not cover investments, and it also does not cover services. So that means that does leave the door open for further talks between these 6 countries and the EU. These EPAs, these economic partnership agreements, are quite new to the EU. So definitely there could be more discussions, more talks down the road. The EU is the world's largest trading partner, and it wants to keep seeing trade increase. So it's very possible in the coming years that there could be additional talks with South African countries to then include these various aspects that are not included here in this EPA.
Indeed. One last question for you, Kevin. The EU, as part of the deal, of course, has committed to not subsidizing the agricultural exports it makes to these 6 countries. But given the vast coverage of the Common Agricultural Program, we're looking at about 50 or so billion euros a year in spending through the CAP. How exactly will that work in practice?
Well, Commissioner Malmström, who negotiated this on behalf of the EU, says this economic partnership agreement is going to be very heavily monitored. She wants to make sure that this really does boost the economies of the 6 African countries. Now, since these EPAs are new, she said, of course, there's somewhat of a learning curve here, but still, nonetheless, she wants to very heavily monitor this to make sure that both sides benefit, but really in particular that the African side of this benefits, and that a number of industries in the South African countries grow. So really she's stressing here that this could create jobs in these countries, this could create growth, and really some sectors in these South African countries could really boom as a result of this EPA.
Indeed. We'll leave it there for the time being. Kevin Osbeck in Brussels. Thank you.